Welcome back to Interview App, where we teach you how to use the Amazon leadership principles to land your dream job. And every week I do these office hours where I like to talk about content that has nothing to do with the actual mock interviews, insofar as like analyzing a mock interview that I did in times past, which we continue to do for free. You can go sign up at interviewapp.com. But I like to talk about questions that have come up, or in some cases, as with this week, some topical news-related items have come up. And Harvard just released, there's a Harvard paper just got released, the title of which is Hidden Workers, Untapped Talent. And the reason I found out about this is not because I perused the papers of Harvard, but because The Verge and the Wall Street Journal covered it. And basically, I'm not going to go into depth. You can go read the articles elsewhere on the web. Very easy to find. Just do a search for Harvard study, Hidden Workers, Untapped Talent. But they highlight that there's a pile of workers that are hidden from companies. Companies are struggling to hire. There's talk of the Great Resignation, all these people leaving their jobs. There's talk of stimmy checks causing people not to want to go back to work. Any host of reasons. But let's be clear. Prior to COVID and anything else that's been going on with this, there existed applicant tracking systems that were gatekeepers to get into a company. When I first started at Microsoft that's my way of saying I'm old and a long time ago, you got in by either A, emailing the person in HR responsible for that group, or B, you knew somebody, right? It's not about what you know, it's who you know. And that remains true, right? Your fastest path into any company basically is going through someone who already works there. But there's been a couple of, we'll call it technology related forces that have all kind of come together and coalesced that have kind of created a situation which honestly becomes untenable after a while, right? You have the ability to cross-post your resume at 100 different places all at once, right? You've got companies that exist for the purposes of job postings, right? It started with Monster way back in the day. Fun fact, I worked peripherally on that offering at Morgan Stanley when I was an investment banking summer associate intern. That was fun. But these systems have existed forever. And the more places that jobs can get posted and people can basically post to a bunch of them at once, it creates a proliferation of data. Right? It just explodes, and there's all these resumes out there. It's hard to know which resume is matched to which job because it becomes the cost. What I meant to say, the cost to the individual to push a button and publish out their resume to a bunch of jobs goes to zero, right? Versus going through a bunch of company sites and finding the job and oh, this is interesting, and click to apply to that job. So the number of resumes has exploded because it's just become easier and easier to publish your resume. With that tsunami of content, HR systems are creaking and groaning under the weight of all of this content, but also the individuals that are responsible for all these things, largely treated as cost centers, not as drivers of value inside of an organization. They don't get the resources they need, typically in most companies. How are they supposed to deal with this? So what they do is they go and they buy an applicant tracking system and they manage their inbound resumes that way. However, because these systems now are getting smarter and they use AI and they use lexical analysis, the systems themselves can start rejecting resumes. And so to the HR manager who's trying to fill a role, they may not even know how many workers are technically suitable for a role, but they never saw them. Right. And it's because there's a variety of reasons which, but we'll get to it in a second. But the article itself specifically cites 3 issues. Training and skills gap. That's absolutely real. We'll come back to that in a second. Not enough effort being fitted to the business case for tech and headcount, whatnot. And I talked a little bit about that already. But, I think the main culprit, even though the article list is the second one, was these ATS systems. They're used in, I believe it was 99% of Fortune 500 companies. Right. These systems, I've only used a couple of them in my career, and look, they're very, very inflexible, right? They're not really designed with the individuality of the worker in mind, right? It's more of the, how do I define a thing? That thing is a job, and then how do I, tag the right keywords or let the system decide what's important so that when it's processing resumes, it's matching resumes to the right jobs. Sounds great in theory. But the reality is that you have people that want to overstate job requirements and these job descriptions, try to make a job description sound great because it's marketing. Oh, we have all these things that you're going to do. And the reality is that that's not really what your job is. And so you end up with things like in the article it cited that nurses had to have computer programming skills for data entry, right? Or customer service skills gets customer service experience gets confused with people that go door to door and install cable or something like that, right? So these confusion layers get introduced, and then you've got a layer of obfuscation from the person to the system, which is the ATS system itself. And it creates a situation where you as the individual submitting your resume, you have no idea what happens when your resume goes in. And that's a problem. And so with no human interaction governing the process and no ability for these systems to say, this is why you didn't get selected, what is the individual supposed to do? It actually just ups the arms race game of I need to publish my resume to more places, right? And so, for those who are as old as I am, they remember web search before Google, right? Lycos, even Yahoo at some level, Excite, which got purchased by At Home. But, back in the way early days of the web, keyword stuffing was a thing, right? There was no way to determine if article A was more definitive than article B, right? When PageRank came along and the PageRank algorithm of Google was able to determine obviously it's much more robust now, but the initial insight was, well, the more links that point to this article, the more authoritative it is. That was an easier way to sift through all of the information available on the web to find the thing that you were probably looking for. So it's a similar problem that we have here with resumes, which is, you write your resume the way you write it. Person A is going to write it differently than person B, C, D, E, very different than me. My resume, I haven't had to use it to get a job in a while because I've been running my businesses for a handful of years, but I'm not certain that I don't think I updated even the format from when I graduated from Wharton Business School in 1997. I think the format was the same, font, layout, the whole thing, right? So how often do people really focus on the content? I couldn't tell you the last time I massaged bullets on my resume, anything like that. And when you don't have a lens on how these ATS systems are processing your resume and telling you what it did or did not like, you're just some random page on the internet that Lycos doesn't know if you're authoritative or not. Same kind of problem. So how do we deal with this? It's funny, coming from a tech person, I'm surprised that my take on this is what it is. I have a problem more and more every day with the algorithm, right? It's how people talk about AI as it's used within specifically places like Twitter, Facebook, etc., YouTube even, right? The algorithm, even as content creators, right? The algorithm governs what people see. And there is no insight into the algorithm, but the algorithm has existed in many places in life. And there's people that are invested in other areas outside of tech, emotionally and mentally, will tell you that mortgages get rejected for the algorithm reasons, right? And your Fair Isaac Corporation, right? Your credit score is essentially the algorithm that governs most people's lives more than they know, right? This gives you access to offers. It gives you access to different marketing lists that you may or may not want to be on. It gives you credit, allows you to get you loans for a house, car, etc., at different rates, better rates, more favorable rates. But do you really understand how the FICO algorithm works? You don't. And so without a responsibility placed upon the companies that use these algorithms to build into their systems ways to then give a human readable answer as to why, we're creating a world in which the machines start doing things we truly don't understand, and we abdicate responsibility to those machines, saying, well, I mean, it's the black box of math, and we can see from the performance these people perform better at these jobs. And while that might be true, if you can't explain it, then how do you optimize for it? And that's somewhat problematic. I don't know what the answer is in the short term, or even the medium term. Long term, I think it's something that needs to be addressed, perhaps even with just a better ATS system. And that might be a topic for another day. But what can you do as the individual? Well, the glib joke I saw on Amazon, on Twitter was, well, I just make sure to include in my fun facts about me that I eat an apple a day every day that I buy from Amazon, or that I buy via Fulfilled by Amazon shop, because I wrote a Python script. It was some long thing, but it was clearly a keyword stuff meant to be a funny sentence to trip up ATS systems. LinkedIn is probably going to continue to be not an unreasonable way to, as much as people hate LinkedIn and all the fakery that goes on there, it is a way to identify a person within an organization that you may or may of a person as opposed to getting lost in the algorithm. I don't know, honestly, if I applied to Amazon today, what would happen with my resume if I went in the system, because I have a job gap, right? As far as Amazon's concerned, I haven't worked in any real place that they care about it since, when did I leave Datalogix? 2016? Been a while, 5 years, right? So how do you explain a job gap? So near term, hard to explain. Just know that it is a problem, and you're probably better off just trying to find somebody who works at the company you're really interested to go work at and go through them. But this is going to continue to be a problem, and it's something that isn't getting talked about enough. I'm glad this Harvard study came out, but wow, we got some work to do here. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in these, Twitter-like social media ecosystem content bubbles where everybody at a job looks the same because the algorithm was overfit to some job description that one HR person wrote for every single job inside of the company, and then they fed into it the resumes that they liked, and the machine, whether purposefully or not, was basically trained on the wrong content, and therefore it built the math models around the content, which basically overfit to a model which was human guided but no one understands, and then that person leaves, and the company CEO is wondering why every employee looks or sounds the same. It's just reality. It's not a race issue. It's not a class issue. It's just a overfitting the black box we call math model issue with unintended consequences of people who are using these systems not really understanding what's going on inside of the systems, and the people who are building these systems not taking the responsibility to design them in a way that it can tell you why. Without the why, we're going to be in some trouble down the road. So that's it for this office hours. Bit of a different topic, but it was topical, and I thought that having I've designed a handful of AI-based systems, and I'm a lifelong product manager, so my lens on this is slightly different than your typical reporter who might look at this and say, "Oh, technology is a problem." No, there are ways to solve this problem, and we have a product management problem for certain. All right, well, if you like this content, go ahead and do me a favor, like and subscribe. If there's questions you want to see addressed in the office hours, I try to do one of these every week. Sometimes I'll do multiple of them in a week. Go ahead and leave the comment below. Let me know what you're really interested in me talking about or sharing opinions on or giving thoughts on. I do my best to answer all the comments. I do enjoy getting them, and let's see what you guys have in mind.